Being black and British to me is like,
Your surname sounds mad, but it's okay. Like, it's all right.
I'm a 16th Montserrat. I include that because I put every flag in my bio.
The unity, the richness, the commonality.
Fried plantain or
Kamalagala,
harder bread.
sambusa,
And
chapati, all these things. And somebody commented saying that it looked like I just bashed the keyboard.
I just grew up on that stuff. That's why I had such a round belly as a child.
it's like a badge of honor. Like it's an awesome thing to be able to, be able to represent.
You're gonna come to a point where you love it.
So my heritage, Jamaican from my mum, Bajan from my dad, and I grew up in South London.
Mum and dad, all the way back to great whoever, is Ugandan. I grew up the road from here, so literally just off of Seabrook Road, East London.
Both parents are Congolese and I grew up in North London.
So my heritage is Caribbean. I'm from Grenada, Trinidad, and Guyana, and I grew up in Plaster, East London.
I'm mostly Jamaican, and I got an Antiguan grandma, and I'm a 16th Montserrat, so I include that because I put every flag in my bio.
My earliest experiences and memories of black culture, I think for me it was quite interesting because I wasn't born in the UK. I was born in Congo, so black culture, African culture, Congolese culture, it was all one to me. I think my earliest memory where there was some form of distinction was when I came over to the UK, and I noticed first of all this country is cold, so that was the first stark realization that I'm definitely somewhere different.
Being black and British to me is like, it's like a badge of honor. Like it's an awesome thing to be able to, be able to represent, and then also being able to look at the ones that have come before me and, take pearls of wisdom and stuff.
One of the earliest memories is like on a Saturday, going to the high street, going to the market, seeing the man selling yam, green bananas, 3 for £1. I mean, you won't find that now, but like all of that stuff. And then Saturday, cleaning. If you're from a Caribbean household, cleaning, hearing the radio. I'm like, yeah, I thought it was normal, but obviously I realized when I got older that it's not.
You'll be hearing reggae, you'll hear gospel, you'll hear, all sorts of things being played around the house, so.
In terms of the UK scene, like when N-Dubs and like Roll Deep and that were popping, I was like into that. And like when Funky House was a thing, it was only in terms of the hits. I wasn't like a complete grime head. Actually, I remember the first time I heard dancehall. That changed my life. I was at my cousin's house and Dude came on by Beanie Man, and I was like, this is me. So yeah, I think that was one of my first experiences of our culture outside of like church culture.
I was influenced a lot by the stuff that was being played in my house.
It was more like the Black American music, and then like TV was what I was into, because like That's So Raven is still one of my favorite shows to this day. Like,
I remember watching The Fresh Prince on TV when I was like, I don't know, 4 or 5.
One-on-one, I think, is Rare Rare Girlfriends. I mean, I was a teenager watching Girlfriends, but I rewatched it again. It's still great, so.
I remember going to like a majority Black Caribbean church.
That is how I thought church was.
And like experiencing the food there. Obviously my nan cooking in her kitchen and stuff like that. I remember like those kind of rich memories and experiences are always what I built upon.
In my culture, Sunday, there's Sunday dinner. Like my mum will cook dinner on a Sunday. So that shaped me in a way that now when I go out and people want to get takeaway on a Sunday, I'm like, sorry, it's Sunday. There's definitely rice at home. And that's a time for my family. We all have dinner together, and that's shaped me now.
My first primary school was pretty black as well. And then when I moved to Essex, that's when I was like, okay, there's just 4 of us, okay, that's lovely. And then I had a white friendship group until like halfway through year 8, even if a lot of my friends are African or Caribbean, didn't matter. So it was quite similar in terms of our jokes. So even if we had different ways of saying things or different ways our parents would run stuff, there was still obviously the more common, just kind of Black British stuff that we had in common.
So my mum obviously would make Ugandan food at home. I ate Ugandan food, just thought Ugandan food was normal, just assumed everyone ate Ugandan food. And then I think I wanted to be like my friends bringing in packed lunch, because I just was getting tired of smiley faces every day. So I decided to ask my mum, I want to take a packed lunch. So she obviously packed like chapati, she packed sambusa, which is like Ugandan samosas, and all these like snacks and things like that I loved. And so I get to school and I'm eating my packed lunch, and it's only when the other kids are like, "Oh, what's that?" that I realised. I was like, "Oh, so we don't all eat this at home." And I think I understood there that, yes, I am, I'm Black and I'm from a country that, has food that's different to other people. And that was like my first, I think, encounter of just realising I was different to everybody else.
And then when I actually entered into school, I got into friction with some of the other students. So just to tell a quick story, occasionally what would happen, so I'm in reception year 1, and I'll be walking in the playground or somewhere, and there'll be two white boys just talking. And obviously they'll be talking, they'll look at me, and then they'll start laughing. I can't understand English. So the fact that they're looking at me, talking and then laughing makes me assume that they're saying something about me. So obviously I take offense, I beat them up, and then we just kind of take it from there. So I think that was kind of my first experiences of being different to the other race until I actually understood what was going on. And then there were other experiences afterwards as well.
Growing up being Black in Britain, I didn't realise I was Black until I got older. And I think that's because I grew up with a lot of Black people around me. So I grew up with a lot of Africans and Caribbeans. I went to primary school with a lot of Black children. Then I went to an all-girls school with a lot of Black people and Black teachers, well, a few. So it's only when I got older and I realised that we're actually the minority that I realised that being Black in Britain, you're the minority, you're not the majority. And that's when I was like, wow.
It's interesting because you kind of get the best of both worlds and also kind of get the worst of both worlds.
There are highs and there are lows in regards to how you see society and how you see Britain, but also how they look at you. And what I mean by that is the highs are that you recognize that you have culture, and British culture is quite limited, whereas African culture and Congolese culture and Black culture is very rich, very vibrant, very outgoing. So you automatically recognize that there's a difference there and there's a sense of community embedded within the culture that others don't have.
So I think the best of both worlds in that, I can speak English fluently. So when I go to Uganda, it's like, they'll banter you and call you white girl. So they'll call me Muzungu, and they want to hear what you have to say because you have this rich accent. You have this experience that I guess they long to see. So I have a level of insight into a world that they kind of want to just live or just witness, and that's really cool. But at the same time, on the flip side, being bantered and being called white girl, it kind of almost simultaneously pushes you away from your culture. So whilst I'm this thing that they want to kind of just poke and prod and ask questions of, I'm also very aware that there's an element of my culture that I guess I'm a little bit far away from because I haven't been in the country for so long, or I didn't necessarily grow up in Uganda.
So I think that's kind of the positives, the unity, the richness, the commonality. The negatives are things such as the racism or the unconscious bias. And once you've kind of recognized that, especially the socioeconomic factors, things start to kind of open up and change. But I definitely think it's different for individuals, and it depends on how well you integrate into white culture and British culture. And those who can, quote unquote, play the game and get in there tend to have an easier transition and an easier time than others.
Especially me, I know my experience is different to a lot of Black people because I'm second generation. So growing up that way, it's like a duality forms. There's always a duality and already I'm kind of light skinned, so people already assume I'm not Black. So I always kind of grew up with this whole "you're not Black enough" chip on my shoulder, and kind of having to prove my Blackness to Black people and to white people, too Black for the white kids, too white for the Black kids kind of thing. So there was always that. But I think as I grew older, it was kind of, I always knew I was Black. My mum made sure she instilled that in me from young.
When I got older, I realised that, wow, there was certain things where were just out of place and shouldn't have been done.
Being misunderstood was a huge problem for me. Like, I always felt like I need to get my point across. I need to be heard.
Overcoming those microaggressions, I feel like because they happened in the past and I didn't realise them then, I can't do anything about it now, but when they happen, like currently maybe at the workplace, and I experience someone saying something, I can now identify that this is a microaggression. I need to check you now so you don't think this can continue, and then move on that way. So I'm like, okay, this happened in the past, I can't change it, but going forward, I won't let certain people talk to me in a certain way.
Like they love our musicians, they love our athletes, they love, you know, the people that are inspiring, they love the gift, but the people behind the gift are often, you know, pushed to the sideline. Sometimes we don't get the credits we deserve. We have a gift at taking pain and turning it into product, you know, and turning it into something beautiful. But the hardship that we have to endure, like just on a day-to-day basis, like you could be, you know, one of the world's greatest performers ever, and when you're on that stage, you get all the admiration in the world. Everyone loves you. But when you've stepped off that stage and you step into the street, and now you're in a place where maybe people don't necessarily recognize you and they don't identify you as that famous figure, you're just another black person. And I'm telling you, the things that can come out, like, it's crazy, man. Like, I've seen it firsthand.
The way I guess I overcame any challenges was just reminding myself that my peculiarity, my difference is okay. I became very comfortable with my blackness. I became very okay and comfortable with being Ugandan, you know.
And a lot of people have said this, and a lot of comedians make this joke. The racism, if you believe that there is racism in Britain or in the UK, isn't literally in your face, it's very subtle. So that's where the unconscious bias is. And there's times where people will say something and you kind of need to ask them, is that, and you're trying to kind of have a litmus test whether if it's offensive or if it's something that you can kind of bypass. And so there's things you can manage that I've pretty much just kind of shrugged off and gone with, because I've just known that this is just what people are like. But there are other situations where you just kind of have to confront it and make it clear and just make your stance clear as well.
I faced a lot of challenges as a kid. Like I had racist teachers. I had one teacher from South Africa and she was out and out racist. She used to pick on me. I had her for like 2 years and that was terrible and difficult. And I guess difficult as well because we couldn't do anything about the fact that she was racist. We couldn't go and tell the head teacher, oh, she's racist, get rid of her. Because it was one of those things, it was microaggressions. It's just stuff that she did that other people and other cultures might not understand. I think as well, you know, trying to figure out how to maintain being black and being Christian, because for some reason, these two things seem to be at odds. Not all the time, but just sometimes. And I think that can come from either, you know, the church that you go to, or the church that I went to at the time. It wasn't necessarily anti-black, but just the things that they condemned sometimes were things that were associated with being black. And it means that you kind of feel like you might have to deny parts of yourself. So I think that was a challenge for me. I think also a challenge for me might have been just really, like I said before, finding myself, finding my identity. And I think even now, it's not something that I necessarily struggle with, but I search to strengthen those links back to home, because I've actually never been home. Because I've always wanted to go with my nan and my mom, and we just didn't have the money. I grew up quite, not poor to the extent that we didn't have anything to eat, but we were getting by. And I didn't realize how much we were getting by until I got older. So yeah, I guess those are some of the challenges. And I think overcoming them, my faith, man. Honestly, I think if I didn't have Christianity and if I didn't have my faith, I would not be as solidified in my identity. Because even though I struggled with my identity, out of all of the kids in my classes and stuff like that, I wasn't really one to follow the crowd. I've always gone my own way. I own my own business. I have friends from all over the place because I'm so used to kind of adapting to different situations. And I think had I not grown up here, had I not grown up in East London with the mum that I grew up with, and I wouldn't have those skills, those interpersonal skills that I have and that I gained from those experiences and those struggles.
And then like when I think about being descendants of Caribbean people, and I think how much of we're survivors, like I don't think we comprehend the fact that a lot of our ancestors I mean, whether even you're fully black or even whether you're mixed up with an Indian person or a Chinese person, you're coming from struggle. And then, you know, your grandparents would have come to England and it wouldn't have been cute for them. And then like your parents would have had a bit of a rough time growing up. Like my dad grew up in South London. That's a complete different country of how they dealt with stuff.
Everything that is immediately affecting me and, you know, that I'm seeing around me, that's what I'm kind of, you know, I feel obliged to speak about. And I feel like we need more spokesmen and women to come out and talk about a lot of these topics, because I think sometimes you can feel like you're beating a dead horse, like you feel like you're just saying the same thing over and over and again and it's not hitting, but it really is, like it's cutting through. So that's why I choose to speak about those things, because first and foremost, it makes for richer music, like longer lasting music. It's incredibly painful to draw and dig that deep at times, but when I look at the after effect, when I look at how it affects people in the long run, and when I release something and then years later people are still messaging me saying, hey man, like I really appreciate you saying those things because I've been dealing with that and I felt alone. I felt I was the only one in the world. Or thank you for speaking on that because I needed to hear those thoughts said out loud because I didn't have a voice to do that for myself. It makes it all worth it.
Things change when you actually share and you talk to people. So it's really helped with in my workplace, family life, friends, and having friends of different cultures, learning from them, not just me teaching them, but learning from them as well.
My culture and my communities have shaped me heavily in my life in regards to my community. So being born again, being the child of God, that's completely transformed my life. It's transformed the way that I think, it's transformed the way that I behave, it's transformed the way that I speak, and certain principles and ethics and morals that I have. But also being Congolese plays a big, heavy part. And I find that sometimes I need to kind of explain elements of my culture for people to understand why I am the way that I am and why I respond a certain way and why I think a certain way. So I'd say that my culture, my communities have affected me in a positive way because it's what I identify with and it's who I am, but also negatively to certain people because of some of the misunderstandings and the differences that we have. But for me, it's all good because it's who I am. And I love it. So there's no change in that. So
I'd say other cultures shaped who I was at the start. So Caribbean culture pretty much shaped, I think, who I was as a young girl growing up. I was surrounded by Caribbean people. My best friend at the time was Dominican and Nigerian, just around, you know, Jamaicans all over, like everywhere. And I loved it. I loved the food, loved the culture, loved the dance, loved the songs, loved everything about it. And I'd say that shaped so much. Even the way, you know, the types of jokes I'd appreciate, those subtle things that make something what it is, just shaped a lot of who I was. And I think gave me a certain lens just as an adult, understanding, you know, when I did kind of come away from that and just started understanding my culture a little bit more, just having that bit of insight, I think made me appreciate the world and people a little bit more. So I'd say it's the same thing when you go and you travel, when you decide to immerse yourself in the country. When you're in it and you're in the thick of it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is genuinely how people live and this is their normal. And I think that time that I had as a young girl gave me a bit of insight and gave me some understanding into, you know, other people's normal.
So the values and the traditions I'll be maintaining in the future, especially with family, is my faith. I think that's very big for me, ensuring that I pass on my faith to my children and to the rest of my family and to my household and our belief in God. It's also our stance on respect and honor.
Saying good evening and good morning to adults when you walk into the room.
Just respect.
Like how you treat people.
That's very big in African culture, and it's something that I'd say isn't as big in British culture. So my children and my descendants growing up in this community, they really need to understand these things and just other things like the language that we speak, Lingala.
I want my kids to be so proud of being black. I don't want there to ever be a shadow of a doubt that they're amazing. I want them to love their skin, their hair, their food.
Food. I want to make sure that I can cook at least every single meal.
Being able to cook for yourself.
So it's not like an other.
The love of music.
That reggae is more than just Bob Marley. You know that there's a lot of us.
The love of dance.
Their heritage to really have an anchor at home, but not to feel weighed down by that, not to feel like they have to stick to those things.
I know it sounds a bit dated, but I take great pride in being able to do those things for myself and other people.
Parents and other kids that I grew up with, they weren't allowed to do certain things because it wasn't black or because it might not be lucrative enough. And I think the generation that's coming up now is definitely a lot more willing to try those things and a lot more willing to branch out. But I definitely want my kids to have that.
And ensure that I'm raising good citizens and good members of the community that can kind of uphold the standards of God and represent themselves well.
Be okay with your peculiarities. Be okay with your difference. You're strange. You know, you're not part of the big numbers, and that is okay.
Embrace your coolness. It may not be cool to everyone else, but the people that like you, they'll embrace it and they'll love you for it.
You're gonna come to a point where you love it. Your surname sounds mad, but it's okay. Like, it's all right. I remember there was one time I was actually listing all the Ugandan foods that I loved, and I was just like really trying to just take pride in my Ugandan culture on Facebook and typing in all the foods that I liked, kabalagala, sambusa, chapati, all these things. And somebody commented saying that it looked like I just bashed the keyboard. They said it looked like the things I was listing that I just bashed the keyboard and I was making things up. Obviously a Nigerian, they know who they are. But it's like things like that. Other people are laughing, by the way, it's not just me. Things like that, like really could have actually just finished me and made me think, yeah, let's not do this again. But things like that, just, again, moments like those, just remind me, it's okay, like you're all right, your food sounds weird, your name sounds weird, but it's okay, there's meaning, especially my surname, there's meaning and there's history behind it, and I take great pride in that and having something that has roots that run so deep.
Don't be afraid to be you, and don't be afraid to stand up for what's right. I think there were a lot of challenges that I faced growing up that I had to deal with by myself. There was a lot of insecurities that I had to face and a lot of things about myself that I didn't like because of other people. So I really needed to find that confidence in myself, to believe in myself and to be proud of myself.
To be more vocal about injustices, in terms of being the butt of dark skin jokes, I wasn't that person. And so when it would happen, whether it would be by another white person or it would be by another black person, I should have said something to support that person more. Make sure that you don't just stick within your own and like branch out more. So, because we have to be in everything and we have to be everywhere. So make sure that other people are embracing your culture as much as you embrace theirs. Like, make your own wherever you are. So, I mean, that's something I'm trying to do now, really, but yeah.
So much can be done with love. A lot can be changed with love. Even the hardest of hearts can be changed if you just show them some love. And I think my community, my schooling, church, like that's a whole nother community of love. That's just like, wow, I really want to love people and just be nice to them. So that's one thing I'd really take forward.
I feel like I wasted a lot of time stressing, but when I really look back at it, like, I'm good. Like, God's provided for me in so many different ways. You know, every day I've got clothes on my back, meals are provided for me, like I'm secure. So I would tell my younger self, don't sweat the small stuff, man. Be good.